For more on China's space program, let's bring in Keith Cowing. He's a former rocket scientist, the editor of NASAWatch.com, and an astrobiologist. He joins us now from just outside Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Give us your reaction to this latest launch and the new mission.
Well, what it shows is that there's a thing with space stations that you have to have a process where you build them and supply them and keep them going. And it's now become routine for China's space station program to have things operating in space. Before this, it was building up to the capability. So if anything, it should become a little bit more boring, which is a sign of success, actually.
Okay, and what isn't boring though is that the Tianzhou-7 has sent human bone cell samples to the country's space station. What are these scientific experiments for?
Well, in this case, you know, I am a biologist. What you experience in space orbiting the Earth is a condition of weightlessness. And that is something that life on Earth never evolved to adapt to. So when you put living things, whether it's plants or people or bone cells, they do things differently. Now, the interesting thing is, sometimes what a cell can do without gravity influencing it is different than it would happen if it was in a body. And it may be a useful difference, and it may allow us to discover how, in this case, bone cells work and how they reproduce, and possibly down the road, how you could morph that basic knowledge into an applied knowledge, which we call medicine.
And China is expected to launch an unprecedented number of spacecraft this year as the country continues to advance its space exploration programs. Is there something in particular that we should be keeping an eye out for?
You know what? China has one of everything now, so you have to sort of take some time out every day just to track everything. My personal interest is China's focus not on the moon, which is interesting, but on Mars. And it's had its rover and orbiter in operation for quite some time. And they have another mission they're now planning, a sample return mission. And to me, as someone who is interested in life in the universe, I'm most interested in that, how that is going, and when that will happen, and what we'll learn from that.
Right. So with all of this, you know, all of the different aspects that you've spoken about today, what do you think that China's ultimate goal is with these missions?
I think some people may ascribe goals to other countries based on their politics or whatever. Personally, I think if you just stand back a bit, humanity, whether it was the U.S. and the Soviet Union back in the last century or now added all the other countries, everybody wants to explore the solar system and out into space. They have different ways of doing it, and oftentimes you learn by watching how others did it before, then you do what they did, and then do something better. And I think the goal is to have a presence of human explorers and robotic explorers looking at the worlds in our solar system. I don't think it's anything more complicated than that. People ascribe warfare and so forth to it, and you know, surprise, we've had space warfare for nearly 80 years. My father was nearly killed by a V-2 rocket in London in 1945. It went into and fell down from space. So these people are saying, oh no, we're going to start having military in space. Well, you haven't been paying attention.
As a biologist, what are you most excited about when it comes to space exploration and research? Would you like to one day see human life on another planet?
Oh, absolutely. I think that is probably, you know, some people will say, well, we should just send robots because they're cheaper and so forth. And if we lose one, well, who cares? Personally, I think this is the fact that the U.S., Europe, Russia, Canada, Japan, India, pick another country, all have an interest in putting their own people into space and sending them somewhere. I think it speaks to a universal desire to go out there. And the more important thing, if you were going to ask, is what do we learn from all of this? If you look at the International Space Station right now, it's mostly the U.S., Europe, and Russia. And again, if you don't pay attention to the news, the U.S. and Russia are not getting along. But on that space station for a quarter of a century, other than small little disagreements, everybody gets along. So maybe the going into space thing teaches us how to get along in space. Maybe we could turn around and teach a few people on Earth how to get along. That's just my fondest dream, that, you know, going out there teaches us something about what we do back here.
Well, depending on your politics, I know that there's a lot of people that are sick of US elections, and there could be a mass exodus before you can even speak.
I'll go. I'll go.
The Uber driver this morning was telling me how he'd like to choose a planet to make another America because he's so fed up with everything. He asked me if he could grow agriculture in the Australian desert, and I said, you'd better off in Mars than the Australian desert. Keith Cowing, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure.